Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today on Health Club retention. We'll be covering a lot of information today about specific member retention strategies and principles that your health club can use to improve your annual and monthly retention rates. So we won't mess around, we'll get straight into things. So before we get into the nitty gritty, let's quickly cover off what we'll be covering in this webinar this afternoon. So we're going to be covering key member retention principles, the blueprint for member retention success. So we're going to actually outline a specific blueprint for improving member retention, and this is something that we recommend to all of our clients. Strategies to maximize member retention. So we're going to actually go through some specific strategies that you can use to improve retention results and some action steps to create real results. So here's a little quick quote that um, basically highlights the importance of member retention for any business, not just health clubs. But obviously it's something that's becoming more and more important for health clubs throughout Australia. So the quote says, "I think the acquisition of customers might be on the verge of being mapped. The battle is going to be retention and lifetime value." Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a business expert. So I think this is a good summary of uh, the importance of member retention, and it really should be at the forefront of any health club manager or owner's mind. Um, so that really sets the stage for us to lay some foundations with some member retention facts. And these have been taken from sources such as Ursa's Guide to Member Retention, the Why Members Quit study, and the Winning the Retention Battle study, which was actually a UK study. So what do these studies tell us? They say that on average, 6 out of 10 members will still be a member at the same health club 12 months after they join. So that's what we call 60% annual retention. And that's what we see um, typical of the average health club throughout Australia. Most clubs, excuse me, have that around that 60% range of annual membership retention. Now, there is a large variance between high retention rate clubs and low retention rate clubs. And what this would suggest is that it really comes down to how the club operates. So some of these studies have shown that annual retention rates can be as low as 39% up to as high as 90%. Now, the 90% clubs tend to be clubs that have multiple services. They might be a health club that has tennis and things like that. So those multi-service clubs tend to have a higher retention rate. For your typical straight health club or even a leisure centre, um, that 60% seems to be the average. We know that a quarter of clubs have annual retention rates lower than 51%. So if your retention rate is currently lower than 51%, you're in the bottom 25% of Australian clubs. Um, so obviously that's an area you want to avoid. On the flip side, a quarter of clubs have retention rates higher than 69%. So if you're aiming to be in the top quarter of clubs, you want to be above 69%. Now, let's talk quickly about the financial impact of member retention. And why do we touch on this? Well, a lot of clubs think, well, it's very hard to improve member retention. And the fact is that it is very hard and very difficult to make significant improvements. However, the small improvements are definitely worth it because even a 2% improvement in member retention can result into as much as a 20% improvement in health club profitability. So the key message here is to focus on small improvements. Even if it's just a 1% improvement, focus on that gradual process of improvement, and over the long term, you'll really see the benefits. And this is really, I guess, highlighted through this study here that compares two clubs that have all the same variables. They have same amount of members to start with, which is 3,000, same amount of new members over the course of the year, the same pricing. The only difference is one club runs at 65% member retention, the other runs at 70%. And if you look over here, you can see the differences year to year between the 65% retention club and the 70%. So these are both good scores, but obviously one has a higher retention rate of 5%, which is not unachievable. So let's have a look at the difference. So at the end of the first year, the club with 70% retention is already 100,000 in front of the club with the 65% retention. Now this starts to compound each year, where the net result at the end of the fifth year, the difference between the two clubs is a staggering $300,000 in revenue per year. So that's a significant amount for a club. So if you compound if you add the difference over a 5-year period, it's over $1 million gap in revenue between the two clubs. So that could be the difference between thriving and just floating along, or even keeping your doors open. So it's important to understand that very small improvements can have a significant impact on your results. So now let's turn to some member retention principles, and we're going to cover 7 key principles here. So it's important to cover the principles of member retention before we go into specific strategies, because it really lays the foundation and the understanding of what drives member retention. The first principle is the 90-day principle. So why 90 days? Well, all the research on member retention for health clubs clearly shows that 90 days is the critical period for member retention. This is the period where we either keep the member or we lose them. If a member has poor usage in the first 90 days, they're highly likely to cancel their membership within 12 months. And that's because, obviously, if they're investing money each month and they're not coming in and using and getting value from the facilities, they're obviously going to come to a point where they realize that they're not getting a return on their investment for the membership. So they're going to cancel. So it's very important to maximize usage of new members in that first 90 days. If we can't get them off to a good start, it's very hard to revive them and recover them from that point on. So we need to have a proactive approach to member retention. So the main focus of attention once a member has joined should be on that first 4 to 6 weeks of membership, and all the effort should be focused on helping the member achieve the equivalent usage of at least once a week, preferably twice a week on a consistent basis. So that comes through having a really strong induction program, and we'll talk about how that works soon. So back to the 90-day principle. This just kind of highlights the importance of those 90 days. So a UK retention study showed the difference between frequencies in visitations of members between month 3 and 6 is minimal. So this suggests that the pattern of a member's frequency of visiting the facility is really established by the third month or the first 90 days. So it's very hard to change that behavior once it's established. The study also showed that 6% of low frequency users in the first month managed to increase their visitation. So only a very small amount of people that start off on the wrong foot, who have low frequency in the first month, are able to change their behavior. So this really emphasizes, one, the importance of having a strong induction so that we can get as many members as possible off on the right track. We really need them starting things on the right track and coming in regularly over that first month. The good news is, if we do have low frequency users in after the first 30 days, we are able to pick up 6% of those by basically intervening and having some kind of support program for them. Okay, so the next principle is member to trainer connection. Now, if you've read any of the retention research that's on offer at the moment, this is a common theme that you'll see throughout all of the retention research. So according to IHRSA's Guide to Member Retention, clubs with strong member to trainer connections will have higher retention rates than clubs where this is not the case. So how can we foster this relationship, and how can we utilize this principle for our benefit? The keys are assigning each member to a specific trainer, provide the member with direct email access so they can ask questions and seek support anytime, and the trainer responsible for inducting a new member, obviously they may not always be available on the gym floor. However, direct email support ensures each new member has access to support at all times. Our next principle is risk rating. So this is one of the most important concepts in the retention puzzle. So we know that there's a direct correlation between facility usage and member retention. And we kind of briefly touched on that when we were discussing the 90-day principle. So risk rating would involve identifying each month members with poor usage patterns, and particularly doing this over the first 90 days of a member's journey. And obviously you want to follow up with these members and offer them an opportunity to receive assistance. You may have an intensive support program or something that can help to try and pick up their frequency of visits. And if we look at the quote below there, it says over 40% of members visiting less than 4 times in the first month will expire before the end of the year. So that really highlights that philosophy and that principle, and it's best demonstrated through this chart here, that relationship that exists between facility usage and retention rates. If we look at a member that's coming 12 times in the first month, after 52 weeks or a year, that group's retention rate is around the 80% mark, as you can see here. Compare that with less than 4 visits, and it's below 60%, so maybe 58%. So there's a significant gap between people that are coming regularly and those that are have poor usage in the first month. So that again highlights the importance of getting members off on the right track. We want to invest our resources and our time into supporting and educating members over that first month, because it'll repay us in retention results in the long term. Principle 4 is a really good one. It's follow-up. And most clubs understand the importance of follow up, but I find from speaking to managers and being around a lot of clubs that this key task often just doesn't get done. Um, so it's important that it's actually followed through and actually actioned within a club. So after a new member has been inducted, they will likely face roadblocks that pose a threat to them achieving their goals. So you want to follow up health club members proactively to remove any roadblocks. The gym instructor responsible for formulating a member's program should make email contact with a member 7 to 14 days after their program induction. And this allows you to remove roadblocks before an irritation that could lead to cancellation develops. We find that email is less disruptive and the member can respond with questions in their own time. Now, this graphic here is very interesting. It is from a study that looked at the effects of emailing um, health club members 7 days after joining. So there was a control group that did not receive an email, and there was another group that did receive an email. Now, the retention rate after 12 months of the members that did not receive the email was a lot lower than those that did receive the email. So there was about a 10% differential in retention rate. So that really highlights how one small action, a 7 day follow up email, can have on member retention results over a 12-month period. And that could mean thousands and thousands of dollars to your bottom line. The problem is that although we know it's important and it's simple, often the simple things, because they are simple, do not get done. It's easy to do them, but it's also easy not to do them. Principle 5 is educational aids. So, an educational aid is something that the member can refer to gain support or education on how to get the most out of their time within the health club. So, we know that 40% of new members have little to no experience in the gym. So often they have to learn a whole new skill set from how to operate a treadmill to how to do weights and how to do specific exercises. So by having what we call educational aids, these are resources that the member can use to help learn during their learning phase at the club. So a couple of examples of these would be simple things like having pictures on workout programs. So a member can remember how to do a exercise. You can even take this further and give members access to videos of exercise technique. So these are little educational aids that you can use to support members. Principle 6 is rewards and incentives. So you want to incentivize usage of your health club in the first 90 days of membership. You want to reward good behavior, which is obviously high attendance. So this ties back into the frequency principle and the 90 days principle. So you want to make rewards progressively more enticing and promote these to every new members. Give members a chance to compete against each other and to receive recognition. So rewards are a funny one that a lot of clubs try, but the key is to really reward frequency and really focus it on that first 90 days because we want to give members an extra carrot or a motivation to chase um, that can really set up their frequency and get them off on the right foot. So again, we need to consider those other principles when designing our rewards and incentive program, so they're in line with the principles and the rules of retention. Principle 7 is member to member connection. So this really is just about um, the importance of the social factor of a health club. The highest attrition group are people that come in and work out by themselves. So you want to encourage people to participate in things like group personal training, group fitness classes, to refer friends and train with friends and family, things like that. Okay, so now we've covered the fundamentals. So you should have a good idea of the philosophy and the principles of member retention. Um, so now we can put together a specific blueprint that perhaps your club can use, and it's certainly what we recommend to our clients, having a similar type of structure to this that we're about to cover. Um, you may want to tweak it to fit your club, but these are the important factors that we really recommend and have seen work really well. So let's have a look at the 90-day principle. We understand the importance of that. So how do we make sure our members get off on the right foot? How do we make sure that their usage pattern of the gym is very good over the first 30 to 90 days? We want a strong induction process with multiple appointments. So a lot of clubs have come up with the philosophy that it takes time and you have to staff appointments and things like that. But this is very important in the retention puzzle to get members off on the right foot. If you got to have the philosophy that this is an upfront investment that's going to return a dividend in the long term in terms of member retention. So not having a strong induction process and not offering appointments to members often can result in a short-term gain, but in the long term, it's going to be quite disastrous for a health club's performance. So you want to invest time up front for delayed gratification on improved member retention. So we recommend having 3 appointments in that first 90 days. So you need a consultation, take them through the exercises if they've got a program, and then have a 2-week session where you can review how they're going. It might even be for only 15 or 30 minutes, but this really gets them coming in and removing any roadblocks. And then obviously you want to review their progress after about 80 days or so to make sure that they're still on track. So this is an important process to have in place, and also an important process to monitor within your health club. Next, we want to combine that with follow-up. So you want to proactively follow up with members to ensure they have the support to continue moving towards their health and fitness goals. Face-to-face contact is always best. However, with limited resources, it's not always practical. So consider using email as a way to create a dialogue and contact a member. So we recommend having at least 3 follow-up contact points over the first 90 days. So around 7 days, 21 days, and 45 days. So you saw the graphic of the importance of the 7-day follow-up email. Just by doing that, you're going to be in front of a large percentage of clubs. The key is actually making sure it's done for every single member, and the majority of health clubs understand the importance of it but just can't get it done. So 7 days, 21 days. So you notice a lot of our actions are focused especially on the first 30 days. There's a lot of resources focused on that because that's a really important period. Now we want to throw in a third factor, which is our risk screening, which is based on our principle of the relationship between frequency of visitations and member retention rate. So we know that members with less than 6 workouts after 30 days are a high retention risk. So what you want to do is generate a list of these members and funnel them into an intensive support program. So you might offer them, say, 2 30-minute personal training sessions, because the investment of that time would be worth the return you get from keeping them as a member. So you want to identify members that need more support and have some kind of intervention program to try and get them back on track, because as you saw earlier, it's very hard, even after the first 30 days, if they've got low usage, it's very hard to change that behavior. So we recommend having risk screening points at 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days, as you can see here. So as you can see, this structure here is our induction process over the first 90 days. So multiple appointments, multiple follow-up emails, and risk screens at the first 30, 60, and 90 days. So this process alone will really have a significant impact on your retention. But we can take it a level further with some of our other principles. So we talked about the importance of member to trainer connection. So other things we consider is link members to a specific trainer, provide them with direct email support to their trainer, interaction on the gym floor is a simple one but an important one. Educational aids we talked about, pictures on workout programs, on-demand exercise videos, and educational newsletters. Rewards and incentives, so a reward program, again focused on the first 90 days, is really good. Member competitions, and then you want to orchestrate or incentivize member-to-member connection, so family and friend referrals, and recommend group fitness classes, etc. So you can see here, this provides a real framework to base your member retention on. However, there are two missing pieces of the puzzle. And without these two pieces, all of this really doesn't matter too much. A lot of clubs understand all these principles. They know them. They've been to events and have heard it all before. However, they still cannot improve their retention rate, and it's because they're missing the two fundamental ingredients that make all these work. All right, so what are the two key fundamental ingredients that separate the A-grade performers for the clubs that just plot around with the 60% retention rate and they can't really move on from that? Okay, let's reveal. The first is the A performers have systems in place to track the key actions required to improve member retention. So we talked about the importance of having the strong induction, the follow-up emails, etc., the risk screening as well. All of these are great, but if a manager or a management can't track the compliance of those actions, the chances are that only a small percentage of those get done. So we need to have something in place to be able to track these key actions required to improve member retention. So that's the first ingredient. And the second ingredient is management to have pig-headed discipline and to hold their staff accountable. You'd be surprised at how many managers are too relaxed with their health club team. They may have a management meeting and say, okay, we really want to work on our follow-up emails. We're going to do one at 7 days and 21 days. And the group may do that well for the first few days and then they fall off. And the management don't have the discipline to keep them accountable and keep them on track. So it's by having these two tools, so the tool of systems in place to track and the management to continually hold staff accountable, that are the real important factors in making the retention strategy work. So systems and tracking. Most clubs do not have the systems and processes in place to monitor the compliance of actions necessary for improving member retention. So I'm talking about things like follow-up emails. Have they been done or not? You need to have this data to be able to manage your team and improve your retention processes. It's almost impossible to improve without this information at hand. So things you want to track, things for your health club to track. When is each member's next follow-up email due? How do you know this? How do your staff track this? Member to trainer interactions, the number of messages sent by trainers and messages received from members. Are you tracking this? Are you keeping an eye on how your staff are performing? Follow-up compliant rates of gym instructors. How many due follow-up actions were actually completed? Are they completing only 30% of the actions they should be? Or are they complying with 100%? It's important to know this. Risk screening, appointment completion rates of members. How many members actually complete the expected appointment sequence after 90 days? When are members due for their next appointment? All of this here is vital to know, and I'm willing to bet that the majority of health clubs don't have a good handle of this information. They don't know how to get it because it's very hard to work out how to extract this information from your club. So again, on tracking, when you track the completion and compliance of these activities, an improvement in your member retention results will follow. And as we've said, the reality is that most clubs simply don't know how or don't have the tools to track this information. And we'll just touch on management again. In every multi-club management, there is always a sizable quantitative gap between the company's high retention and low retention clubs. This gap exists even for comparable clubs with the same physical assets. These gaps can be as broad as 10 to 15%. So even for allowing for uncontrollable factors, this implies that superior management can consistently achieve member retention rates that are at least 5% higher than those by less talented management. So management, again, is a vital ingredient, but as we said earlier, if the management don't have the tools and the reporting to track these key retention actions, it becomes very, very difficult. So that really summarizes the content today that we wanted to cover. I'll quickly cover off a bit about our organisation and what we offer for clubs, and then we can finish off with some question time. So our organisation and our technology, Mobile Fit, helps clubs do what we spoke about in the webinar today. We help clubs get the tracking information on key retention tasks such as follow-up, messages sent and received, appointment inductions. We give you all the important information and data that you need to really monitor the compliance of retention actions through your health club. So it gives you as a manager the tools to be more effective so you can really keep staff accountable and really follow the retention framework that we've set out. So if you would like to know more about how this works and perhaps have a demonstration of some of the reporting and compliance tools, um, we can offer you that at another time. So the contact information is there on the screen. So um, that being said, let's head to any questions and we'll open up the lines.